Guys, there is no need to suffer with your diet restrictions when you've got Magic Spoon in the kitchen. I love this cereal. My wife loves Magic Spoon. My kids love Magic Spoon. It tastes amazing. With 0 sugar, 14 grams of protein, only 4 net grams of carbs, and 140 calories in each serving. Your body will love Magic Spoon. There's 8 delicious flavors: cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, cinnamon, and blueberry, maple waffle, and cookies and cream. My favorite is frosted, but limited edition flavors come out all the time. Magic Spoon is keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, and has no GMO. They are so confident in this product, they will back it with a 100% happiness guarantee. You know what that means? If you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Go to magicspoon.com/Chael. Use the promo code Chael, or just click on the link below. That's going to get you $5 off your entire order. Jorge Masvidal finally came out and spoke since his last fight, his loss to Colby Covington. And George was very open. As a matter of fact, the article was titled, "I Was Irate," Jorge Masvidal, and he spoke about that. It wasn't just clickbait. I clicked on it. He talked about that. I was fierce. I need to be by myself. Don't call me, don't check on me, and don't expect to see me. I'm going to go lock down. I need to internalize this. I need to deal with this pain as a way of studying so that I can move forward. Now, George talked about the wrestling deficit that he had against Colby Covington. He talked about how he's going to solve it. He's going to go out to State College, Pennsylvania. He's going to train with the Penn State team. They've got world and Olympic, it's called a regional club out there. He can get wrestling in the morning, he can get wrestling in the evening. He can go out there for X amount of time, get 2 a days there with the best guys in the world, and everything's going to be fine. Now, I liked the article. I liked it a lot because I like Jorge Masvidal. I liked it a lot because Jorge Masvidal is the BMF champion, sitting, reigning, and he's the number 2 draw in the entire sport. That has not changed. Absent of his loss to Colby Covington, there is only one other name in MMA bigger than Masvidal. It's McGregor. So, but what do? Because a lot of guys get up there in that loft and they start resting on their laurels. And you can do that for a little bit. You may get to one of those top spots. You can hang on for a little bit. If you're not still hungry and motivated, if you're not willing to look at the man in the mirror, if you're not willing to look at a fight and address what the problem was as a way of solving it, you're not going to stay there for long. So I liked the article because George was very mature and he did all of those things. Now, and that was my takeaway. My takeaway was the number 2 draw in the sport, the BMF reigning champion, is still hungry. And he's still got the eye of the tiger and he's still willing to put the work in. But that's where it stopped. I don't agree with his assessment. I do not believe that Jorge Masvidal has a deficit in wrestling. I have seen every single one of his fights. He has been out-wrestled twice ever. One was on no notice against Kamaru Usman, who is a national wrestling champion. The other one was with plenty of notice against Colby Covington, who out-wrestles everybody. George does not have a wrestling deficit. He doesn't. He has a deficit in comparison to Colby Covington, but I bring that point, and it's relevant that you see my point so that I can then raise you. You're not going to close that gap, but you don't have to because you're not out there wrestling him. And if George is going to go to State College, and I will guarantee you this is the thought on George's mind right now, until he sees this, and I hope that I can influence him. The number one thing that George is going to go do is learn to stop a wrestler. He's going to go in there twice a day, every day, seeking defense so that he can deal with the wrestler. That's the wrong mindset. If he wants to go wrestle, if that's what he needs mentally, then that's what he needs. If he believes it, then it's true. But he needs to go out and learn offense. There will be no better way to shut down a wrestler than to attack him. You've heard this in sports many times. But the greatest defense is a good offense. If you go out there and you're looking to defend anything, it's going to happen to you. Maybe it happens to you a little bit less. Maybe you do better at losing than you would have done if you... It's the wrong mindset. If George wants to go out to State College, learn how to get on guys' heads, get to the body, learn his inside trips, learn his body locks, get a blast double. If he wants to go out there and do that, I support this completely. But he could also go out there for 2 weeks and fulfill what would take him 2 years if he goes in with a defensive mindset. Now, another thing. Go back to George's wrestling. When I tell you I have seen all of his fights, that's literal. I've even seen the ones when he was a teenager and he went in the backyard in Florida. I've seen everything this guy's done. He does not have a wrestling deficit. That's not true. There is a couple of guys within this sport who have weaponized pace. If you can turn pace into a weapon, it's a problem. It is the great intangible. You do not have to be as good as your opponent. You don't have to be nearly as good as your opponent if you can attack him 5 times for every 1 time he attacks you. There's only a couple of guys that can do that. A 25-minute atmosphere is so incredibly grueling, but Colby Covington's one of those guys, right? And you can be as prepared as you want, guys. If a brick falls on your head, you're in trouble. It's not an excuse or something that George needs to expect. He does just need to be aware that he is not likely to face anyone like that again. And the other thing, George is going to have to be in 5-round fights. It's relevant. George versus Colby Covington, even what you guys saw. George versus Colby Covington right now, but for 15 minutes is a different fight. Because now all of a sudden that pacing doesn't come in. All of a sudden Masvidal doesn't have to switch over from attack mode to survival mode just for the moral victory of getting the distance. But some fighters can just go to co-main event. Some fighters can just stagger their career and make sure that they're not the top of the bill. George can't, because it does come back to what I talked about. He's the second biggest draw in the sport. Make no mistake, whatever is next for Jorge Masvidal will be the feature match. So he's going to have to go 5 rounds, right? Okay. So now you've got a pacing issue, though, which was the true deficit between George and Colby. And secondly, if you want to go learn wrestling, don't focus on the defense, focus on the offense. Learn how to attack that guy. Just by that, by proxy, you'll learn how he's attacking you. There's a place in Thailand. You can go, and they will teach you sword fighting in 1 hour. They guarantee it or your money back. It's $500 for the hour. And they guarantee in 60 minutes you'll know how to sword fight. Now, what is their secret? You ready for it? They use real swords. And I am not joking. You will pay $500 and you will have an opponent and you will have a real sword, and so will he. And they guarantee. I've never heard anybody got their money back. Crazy as that story is, this has been around since the 90s. They're still doing it now. There's something very true about that urgency. If my son ever got into fighting, and I want him to be able to deal with a wrestler, I'm not going to do it on the feet. Your options are very limited. You have an ability to understand range. As soon as that wrestler closes the gap, he closed it by getting you into bad position. He's already got your hips. Wrestler gets your hips, you got problems. Now, there's things that you can do, and you can offer some resistance. The key is that once you go to the floor, that you can get back up. That is the absolute key. If you want to shut down a wrestler, you don't have to stop his takedown. You must get up off the bottom. Find a way to get that under. Get your opposite head down. Keep your head up and stand up. That one technique. But if you can do it against him, I see other guys get taken by wrestlers, but they'll straight arm him. Called the Heisman. See that Heisman trophy where guys turning like this? But you do that with your palm to his head. You lock your elbow. You keep the space. You scoot down. As soon as a wrestler is not on your shorts, he can't wrestle. It's another big key that a wrestler must have that a lot of people haven't figured out. The reason the wrestlers attack the hips and the butt cheeks, because that's where the shorts are. You ever want to give a guy a problem in a wrestling room? Tell him you forgot your shoes. Show up for wrestling practice if you know you're out arm. Okay, hey, I forgot my shoes. I'm just going to go ahead and do it barefoot. He will not score on you. A wrestler can only score when the wrestler can touch fabric. The fabric of the shorts, or for guys that are really big fools and they show up wearing knee pads. A wrestler cannot score on anything that's slippery, which includes your knees and includes your feet. It's very relevant that you know that. So if you ever are stuck on a wrestler, push his body down so that his hands aren't on your fabric. You'll get right up. And if you get up against a wrestler, he's not going to try to take you down again. There is nothing that will break a wrestler's spirit more than getting a takedown and not being able to hold it. So I just offer this to Masvidal. I like where his head's at. I like that he's motivated. I like that he's willing to humble himself, because he will be the BMF who's 37 years old, the richest, most powerful guy in the room, and he's going to go get his ass kicked by kids. It's one reason that nobody in MMA can learn how to wrestle. You either need to show up knowing how to do it, or you're not going to get better. Because as soon as you're in the UFC and you're that big fancy guy, you go in a room, people are happy to see you, and then you got a kid kicking your ass, and that's what's going to happen. Masvidal knows it. He's going to get his ass kicked twice a day, every day, but by the time he leaves, he's going to be getting it kicked less by these guys that have world and Olympic aspirations. I love everything about it. I love the hunger in it. Masvidal did that for a period of time. He actually did it with Colby. Came right here to Oregon, went up to Oregon State. It was a beating, but boy, was he working hard. He was getting that cardio up. So some of it is the intangibles. We always want to look on the outside in fighting. Our trainer, well, if he would have dipped this way and he would have gone to the body, if he would have rolled this way instead of, you always do that. But the truth is, man, how tough are you versus how tough is him? Where was your level of confidence? Where was your level of conditioning? Now, in all fairness for Masvidal, he checked those boxes. He just had a guy, the only guy in the entire goddamn division that can make a weapon out of cardio. I don't think that's what he's going to have to face in the future, but if this is what he believes and this is truly what he wants to do, he needs to answer the question real honestly. Could I match his pace? Is there anything that I can do to up my cardio? Because eventually people will top out. That's another thing the strength and conditioning coach will never tell his clients. Each person, based on their DNA and their VO2 max, has a ceiling. You can keep running and you'll never beat this. You can keep doing sprint. You're never, right, you get here, you're there, you're done. So now you got to look for other ways. You got to look for scrambles. You got to look for insight. You got to learn how to manage that energy. You got to learn how to grab this guy. You got to look for places that you can rest, which in MMA is very hard to do. It's very hard, but there are places. You get an underhook, you learn how to control that finish. You know what the danger zone is? You can get a couple of breaths. So these are the things that I think that George needs to work on. The good news is George's still hungry. George is willing to humble himself. George is willing to get better and wants to get better. And I encourage that he do, because he is going to return to a main event.